Security shoves Chuck. Then the restaurant owner walks in. It's him. The sign outside the restaurant read Davenport's. Elegant, in gold letters, etched into a clean black background. The kind of place that didn't serve burgers with your hands. The kind where music played low and water glasses never went empty. Where wealthy men spoke in quiet voices and servers moved like shadows. And tonight it was full. Inside, laughter sparkled like wine. A live piano played near the fireplace. Hosts greeted guests by name. Servers wore vests and pocket squares. The world inside Davenport's was polished. Perfect. Untouchable. And then, Chuck Norris walked in. He didn't belong. Not by the looks of it. Old boots. Faded jeans. A denim jacket that had seen more years than the host standing behind the podium. His hair wasn't combed. His hands were calloused. His presence, unmistakable. But nobody knew it yet. Not here. Not in this room built on reputation and reserve. He didn't speak. He just stepped forward. And suddenly, everything around him felt slower. The host blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry, sir. We're fully booked tonight. Do you have a reservation?" Chuck looked at him. Calm. Still. The kind of look that says I don't need to explain myself. But the host mistook silence for hesitation. "Sir, this is a members-only night. Private function. I'll have to ask you to." He didn't finish. One of the security guards had already started walking over. Broad, square-jawed, wires tucked in his ears, built like a wall with arms. He didn't ask questions. He just stepped between Chuck and the entrance and shoved him. Hard. "You're done here, cowboy." Chuck took the step back without stumbling. No flinch. No words. Just a slow look at the man's hand, still outstretched. And for a moment, the whole restaurant froze. Not because of what had happened, but because of what didn't. Chuck didn't retaliate. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain. He simply looked down at the floor where his boot had landed and then back at the man's face. And then, quietly, he turned. The hostess behind the podium exhaled. Guests returned to their chatter. The piano played on, and a security guard smirked as if he'd won something. He hadn't. Not yet. Chuck walked across the parking lot and stopped near the tree line. He didn't go to his truck. He didn't light a cigarette. He just waited. There was something about that place. Something off. He hadn't come for the food. He hadn't come by accident. And now, he was exactly where he needed to be. Inside Davenport's, behind the kitchens, the staff buzzed like a hive. Cooks shouted. Waiters passed plates. A man in a gray suit moved between them, barking orders. "Table 9 needs the trout. Where's that risotto?" No one noticed the man in the corner booth near the back hallway. He hadn't spoken since arriving. He wore a tailored suit. Expensive, but his face was unreadable. Cold. He glanced up when the host approached, nervously. "We had a situation," the host whispered. "Some guy tried to walk in without a reservation. Looked like a drifter. We handled it." The man's eyes narrowed. "Describe him." "Denim jacket. Boots. Gray hair. Didn't say a word." A pause. "And you put hands on him?" "Well, security did. Just one shove." He walked off. The man didn't say anything. He just reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Scrolled through something. Stopped on a photo. Held it up. Was it him? The host looked, and every drop of color left his face. "Why, yes. That's him." The man stood slowly. "Where is he now?" "He left. I think." "No," the man said. Eyes dark. Voice colder than ice. "He never just leaves." Back outside, Chuck was still waiting. Watching. Because the reason he'd come wasn't about dinner. It wasn't even about the restaurant. It was about a girl. 2 nights ago, in a town 80 miles east, he'd been drinking coffee in a gas station. Quiet night. Few cars. The clerk had slipped him a receipt with 2 words written on the back. Davenport's. Tomorrow. Help. No signature. No name. But Chuck had seen the fear in her eyes. And he'd driven straight here. Not because she asked, but because someone needed to. From the corner of the restaurant, a side door opened. A young woman stepped out to smoke. She lit a cigarette with shaking fingers, leaned against the wall, and wiped a tear from under one eye. Chuck approached from the darkness. She didn't notice him until he spoke. "You the one who sent the note?" She gasped, dropping the lighter. "Step back. You're safe. You shouldn't be here." "You asked." "You don't understand," she said, voice trembling. They don't just run a restaurant here. They move girls. Through the back. People with money come for more than steak. Chuck's face didn't change. Who's in charge? She hesitated, then whispered a name. Harlan Davenport. Chuck nodded once. The owner. Yes. And if he sees you, he already has. She looked toward the back door. You have to go. Not yet. Suddenly, the restaurant's main door flew open. Two men stepped out. Security. Looking around. Searching. The woman tensed. Chuck placed a hand on her shoulder. Light but grounding. Go inside. Act normal. What about you? I'll be fine. You don't know what they're capable of. Chuck looked toward the men approaching. Neither do they. She slipped back inside. Chuck walked calmly toward the other end of the building. The men saw him. Started following. But before they reached him, a black SUV rolled into the lot. Clean. Silent. Parked near the entrance. The back door opened, and Harlan Davenport stepped out. Immaculate suit. Silver cufflinks. A look in his eyes that made grown men listen. The guards turned to him. Sir, where is he? They pointed. There. But when they turned back, Chuck was already gone, like a ghost carried on wind. Harlan scanned the lot, then turned to his men. Lock down the restaurant. Nobody leaves. I want all exits covered. Sir, should we call? No police. He straightened his jacket and said the words that changed everything. This isn't just a stranger. That was Chuck Norris. Inside Davenport's, the atmosphere had changed. The lights hadn't dimmed. The piano still played. The waiters still smiled. But behind every gesture was hesitation. In every glance, a question. Because the owner had shown up unexpectedly. And when Harlan Davenport arrived, without warning, it meant someone was in trouble. And now, he was pacing behind closed doors, which meant someone was about to disappear. Harlan's private office was tucked behind the wine cellar, accessible only through a hallway guests weren't supposed to notice. A fingerprint lock on the door, a second lock on the filing cabinet, and one photo on the desk, his daughter. Or so he said. The men he trusted stood in silence as he made a single call. Yes, it's him. A pause. No, I'm not sure what he wants. Another pause. Longer. Then I'll make sure he never gets it. He ended the call, turned to his men. He's still here. I want every back entrance watched. Sweep the alley. And if you see him again, he looked them over. Don't engage. Call me. I'll handle it myself. Meanwhile, in the shadows near the kitchen delivery ramp, Chuck crouched behind a dumpster, eyes fixed on the basement door. He'd seen the girl slip through it earlier with a tray of dishes. But she wasn't delivering. She was watching, just like he was. He waited for 22 minutes. Then the door creaked open again. She stepped out quickly, glancing over her shoulder. Chuck moved toward her like smoke drifting into light. She didn't scream. She expected him. You shouldn't be here. What did you find? She held up a folded piece of receipt paper. Her hands trembled as she handed it over. On it a name, a date, a shipment. They're not just moving girls. They're moving money. Through the kitchen vendors. There's a truck coming tomorrow night. Midnight. But it's not carrying produce. Chuck read the name, Red River Distribution. He nodded. That's when it ends. You don't get it. This place, it's more than a restaurant. It's a front. There are judges that eat here. Cops that protect it. Harlan isn't scared of anyone. Chuck looked her in the eye. He will be. Back inside, Harlan stood by the bar, sipping something aged and smooth. He had a way of carrying power, not with loudness, but with expectation. People stepped out of his way without thinking. Waiters lowered their heads when he passed. Even the pianist paused slightly when their eyes met. He liked it that way. He liked control, which is why Chuck's presence made his stomach twist in a way he hadn't felt in 20 years. In the control room behind the kitchen, security feeds buzzed across screens. One of the men zoomed in on a grainy frame near the back alley. Got him. Chuck was standing still, hands at his side, watching a camera he knew was there, staring directly into it. The man swallowed. He knows we're watching. Then stop watching, Harlan said, stepping in. Shut it all off. If you want to play games, let's make it quiet. The screens blinked out. Darkness. He's not here to be seen, Harlan added. He's here to send a message. What do we do? Nothing. He paused. For now. Outside, Chuck had already moved. He didn't need cameras to know when eyes were on him. He made his way across the service lot, slipped through a side fence, and followed the rear corridor toward the staff parking area. He stopped at a small employee car. Inside, a bag with a driver's license hanging out. A girl, blonde, young. He tapped lightly on the trunk. It popped open. Inside, uniforms. Not just for wait staff, but security. Smaller sizes. Chuck's jaw tightened. He took a photo, then closed the trunk gently. He didn't need to confront her. Not yet. But he knew one thing now for certain. They were forcing staff to do more than serve tables. And some never made it out. Back near the entrance, a delivery man was wheeling in boxes of organic imports. Chuck watched, noted the logo. Same company listed on the slip, Red River. He followed the delivery van as it pulled away down a side road that snaked out of town. He stayed far back, driving slow, headlights off. And then, the van pulled into a warehouse lot. Unmarked, gray, quiet. Chuck didn't stop. Not yet. But he noted the address. Midnight, he murmured. Right. By 11:30 p.m., Chuck had returned to the tree line near Davenport's. He watched as lights dimmed, customers cleared out, and staff left in staggered shifts, except for the ones who didn't. He saw the girl again, the one who gave him the receipt. She stayed behind, and Chuck didn't like that. He checked the time. 27 minutes to midnight. Then he turned toward the horizon. The warehouse was calling. The gravel crunched under Chuck's boots as he approached the side door. He wasn't hiding anymore. He wanted them to see him coming, to feel that tight grip of inevitability. He knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. He pulled the door open. Wasn't locked. Inside, the light flickered. Stacks of boxes lined the walls. Pallets wrapped in plastic. A forklift sat silent in the corner. And in the center of it all, the delivery van. Parked. Keys still in the ignition. Footsteps echoed. 3 men emerged from the shadows. Not surprised to see him. You got no business here, old man. Chuck didn't reply. Just stepped forward. They circled. The biggest one cracked his knuckles. We know who you are. Then walk away, Chuck said. You're outnumbered. I've been outnumbered my whole life. We're not afraid of you. Chuck stepped into the center of the circle. You should be. The fight didn't last long. Chuck moved with the calm of someone who'd done this too many times to count. One man went down after a knee to the ribs. The second stumbled into a stack of boxes and didn't get back up. The third swung a crowbar. Missed. Chuck disarmed him, flipped him to the ground, and pinned him with one knee. What's in the boxes? The man didn't answer. Chuck reached into his pocket, pulled out a phone. You have 2 choices. Talk to me, or talk to the feds. The man spat blood. Doesn't matter. Harlan owns half the law in this town. Chuck stood. Then it's time someone gave the other half something real to believe in. He opened the back of the van, and what he saw confirmed everything. Not produce. Not dry goods. Pills. Weapons. Cash. All hidden under boxes of wine and exotic seafood. He took photos, scanned shipping codes, then lit a match, dropped it, walked away. By the time the fire climbed into the sky, Chuck was already back in the truck, watching from the hillside. No sirens came. Not for 20 minutes. And when they did, they didn't come to help. They came to cover up. But it was too late. Chuck had the photos, the logs, and a location to return to. Because now, it was personal. He didn't come here to burn one warehouse. He came to pull the whole thing down. And that started tomorrow night, when Harlan's last shipment came through. And Chuck would be waiting. As Chuck drove away from the burning warehouse, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. They know. She's still inside. He didn't hesitate. He turned the wheel. Back to Davenport's. Back to where the real fire was waiting. The text burned brighter than the fire behind Chuck. They know. She's still inside. No name. No number. Just the truth. And for Chuck, that was enough. He turned the truck around, tires grinding on gravel as the glow of the warehouse disappeared in his mirrors. The girl who had risked everything to pass him the slip, who whispered about the shipments, about the truth, she wasn't safe. She was still inside Davenport's. And they knew it. He didn't drive recklessly. He drove precisely. Each second counted, but each mistake could cost everything. The roads twisted through shadows. Small towns blurred past. Billboards flickered in the moonlight. But Chuck's grip on the wheel didn't falter. Not once. He wasn't heading to rescue someone. He was heading to finish what had started. Inside Davenport's, the lights had dimmed. Only a few remained behind the heavy doors. Kitchen lights, hallway sconces, emergency exits. The customers were long gone. But the real business hadn't ended. It had just shifted. Downstairs, beneath the wine cellar, behind the wall with no handle. The girl, her name was Emily, stood near the edge of the cellar's inner corridor. Two men blocked her path, one at the top of the stairs, the other watching the back door like a hawk. She could hear Harlan's voice somewhere behind the walls, speaking calmly to someone on the phone. Yes, we've confirmed the fire. He torched it, but he left tracks. Pause. It won't reach us. I have people cleaning. Another pause. No, the girl doesn't matter. She won't talk. A soft click. The call ended. And then, footsteps. Getting closer. Emily backed against a shelf of expensive glassware, breathing shallow. She clutched her small phone in her palm, screen cracked, battery low. She'd sent the message. Now all she could do was wait and pray it had reached him. Harlan rounded the corner. Slick, polished, confident. The kind of man who believed he still held every card. You're still here? He asked, voice smooth. Emily straightened. I was told to help with cleanup. No need. We're shutting early. Seems there's been a complication. She tried not to flinch, tried not to let her eyes drift to the stairs. But Harlan noticed. You've been busy, haven't you? Emily didn't answer. You think I don't see everything under this roof? That a girl like you can slip messages past my people? Her voice cracked. I didn't. Stop lying. His smile faded. His mask slipped. Just for a moment. You think that man is going to save you? Chuck Norris. He stepped closer. I built this city. I have judges in my pocket. Chiefs. DAs. You think I'm afraid of one has-been soldier? Emily stepped back, but Harlan caught her wrist. I don't need to hit you. I just have to disappear you. And then, the power cut. Darkness swallowed the hallway. The lights blinked once. Twice. Then silence. No hum. No buzz. Even the cameras died. And in that blackness came a sound. A footstep. Measured. Deliberate. One. Then another. Then a shadow past the wine racks. And from it, Chuck stepped into view. Harlan turned, slowly, still gripping Emily's wrist. You've got guts walking back in here. Chuck didn't answer. Didn't need to. The glow of emergency lights cast long shadows over his face. Enough to see the dirt on his boots, the soot on his coat, and the steel in his eyes. Let her go. Harlan raised an eyebrow. You're trespassing. Chuck took another step. Let her go. Or what? Harlan challenged. You'll burn this place down too. A beat. Then Chuck said low. If I have to. Harlan shoved Emily toward the guard beside him. Lock her in the wine cooler. The man hesitated, then reached for her. But Chuck moved, faster than anyone expected. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, grabbed the man's collar, and slammed him into the wall with a single motion. He didn't knock him out. He didn't need to. He just looked at him. Walk. The man did, stumbling back up the stairs like a man seeing a ghost. Harlan didn't run. That wasn't his style. But his fingers reached toward the panel near the stairs, the silent alarm. Chuck noticed. That won't work. You think this ends with me? Harlan sneered. Chuck took another step. No, it ends with what you built. And what are you going to do? Arrest me? Chuck looked down. Not my job. Then what? Chuck's eyes locked on his. I'm here to expose you. Sirens blared outside. Not emergency sirens. Broadcast sirens. From a van parked across the street. Suddenly, the hidden cameras planted by Chuck earlier began to stream. Live. To a private YouTube channel already emailed to half a dozen journalists. To federal agents. To the local station Chuck had passed on his way into town. The footage played. The girls. The boxes. The fake deliveries. And now, Harlan Davenport on camera, with Chuck Norris standing in frame. You set me up, Harlan whispered. Chuck said nothing, just stared, and let the evidence speak for itself. Upstairs, the remaining staff had gathered in confusion. Some had phones. Some were filming. Others, the ones who knew too much, were already trying to leave. But the front doors had been chained shut. The police would be there soon. Real ones. The kind that couldn't be bought this time. Because Chuck had made sure this wasn't just justice. It was public. Emily sat in the corner of the cellar, knees drawn up, eyes wide. She was free now, but freedom doesn't feel real at first. It doesn't wrap around you like a coat. It hits like cold air after fire. Sudden, sharp, real. She watched Chuck stand over Harlan, not hitting him, not shouting, just letting the world see, letting truth win for once. And she wept, not from fear, but from finally being believed. 10 minutes later, the sirens arrived. Real ones. FBI, state troopers, internal affairs. More uniforms than Harlan had ever seen at one time. They took him quietly. He didn't resist, didn't scream, because the camera was still rolling. And even he knew this was the end. Chuck stepped outside into the cold. Lights flickered against his jacket. Agents asked questions. He gave no answers. He handed over a phone, a flash drive, a notebook, then walked toward his truck. Mr. Norris, I'm done here. We'd like to debrief. You already have the truth. That's more than most ever get. He climbed into the truck, started the engine, and drove. The next day, the news broke. Celebrity vigilante exposes human trafficking ring in luxury restaurant. Chuck Norris involved in breaking multi-million-dollar crime syndicate. Davenport's shut down. Federal investigations widen. Photos spread across social media. The video hit 5 million views in a day. But Chuck wasn't watching. He was already somewhere else. In a shelter 2 towns over, Emily sat at a desk, filling out her first college application. A clean room, a warm bed, a new phone, and a note folded in her pocket. You were never invisible. See, in a prison 2 states away, Harlan sat in a cold cell. He stared at the wall, and behind him, a guard entered with a letter. No return address, just one word written across the front. Next. The town of Hillgrove woke up to flashing headlines and spinning sirens. Davenport's was shut down, locked, caution tape flapping in the wind like yellow streamers from a celebration no one planned. Inside, the lights were off, the windows dark. The polished gold letters on the sign looked smaller now, weaker, as if the truth had stolen their shine. But even as the world watched the collapse of an empire, the damage didn't disappear. It whispered in alleyways. It lingered in eyes. It hung in the silence of every girl who hadn't spoken yet. And Chuck knew the fire was still burning. He didn't go far after Hillgrove, just across the county line. He pulled off onto a dirt road behind a forgotten motel and sat in his truck for a long time, engine off, keys in his lap. There were bruises on his knuckles, ash in his coat, but the weight on his shoulders? That was older. It came from knowing that one takedown never meant it was over. It just meant another one was watching. At a truck stop diner 50 miles out, the waitress filled Chuck's coffee without asking. She recognized him, but didn't say anything. That was fine. He didn't come for recognition. He came to listen, and it didn't take long. A man 2 booths down was talking too loud. About a place called the Glenview. New place. Open fast. No press. All cash. You just got to know the right person, he said with a wink. Chuck looked up once, memorized the name, then took his coffee to go. Meanwhile, Emily was adjusting to freedom, which, oddly enough, felt heavier than being trapped. She had room now, room to think, to breathe, to feel the jagged edges of all the things she hadn't let herself process. The shelter was safe, the counselor kind, but safety doesn't feel safe when you've lived too long expecting pain. She sat on the edge of her bunk, staring at the envelope Chuck had left her. Inside it, a second note. You don't owe the world your story, but you deserve to write it. She cried again, not because she was broken, but because for the first time, she didn't feel erased. Chuck stopped by a public library on the way out of town. He used a secure laptop from his pack, tethered to a signal booster he'd rigged himself. Searched for the Glenview. Found nothing. That was the problem. Places built to be invisible always leave a trail. He pulled up business filings, LLCs, owner names that led nowhere. But there was one connection, an old distributor he'd seen back in Sandridge. Used to front cash into Davenport's before the shutdown. Now, they were moving shipments into the Glenview. Same playbook, different cover. Chuck shut the laptop. Time to move. Back in Hillgrove, the news vans had packed up, but not everyone had gone quiet. Inside the county courthouse, a young assistant DA was gathering evidence. She'd seen the video Chuck leaked, the documents, the trail. She wanted more. "We can't let this disappear," she told her supervisor. He waved her off. "It's handled. One man, one business. Done." But she knew better. She saw the list Chuck had compiled. Names, places, whispers, and at the bottom of the list, the Glenview. That night, Chuck arrived in Crestwood, a small city with a clean face and dirty alleys. The Glenview sat at the edge of town, half bar, half lounge, full of secrets. Outside, two men stood by the door, big, smiling, but their eyes told the truth. They weren't there to greet people. They were there to filter them. Chuck didn't try to walk in. He just parked 2 blocks down, crossed the street, and bought coffee from a gas station across the road. Sat on a bench and watched. Inside the Glenview, a girl named Leah was working behind the bar. She wore a black dress, red lipstick, a smile painted carefully across her face. But every time she turned away from a customer, her hand shook. She'd seen what happened to the last girl who tried something. She still heard it in her sleep. But tonight felt different, like something was coming, something that might finally break the spell. Chuck stayed for 3 hours, saw 6 men walk in alone, saw none walk out, watched a black van circle the back alley twice. No plates, tires dusty with miles. He wasn't ready yet. He needed the inside, the cameras, the story. He needed eyes. So he waited, and at 2:18 a.m., Leah stepped out for a smoke. She stood in the alley behind the Glenview, shoulders tense. Chuck emerged from the dark. No threat in his stance, just presence. "You don't know me," he said. She jumped, dropped her lighter. He caught it. "But I know who you are. Who sent you?" "You did, when you didn't look up all night." She blinked. "They'll kill me. Not if I take the power from them first." She swallowed hard. "They're watching. So am I." He handed her a card. "Burn it after you use it. The voice on the other end will guide you out." She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. She saw it in his face. That same calm fire. The same silence before storms. Chuck didn't go home. Didn't sleep. He wired a micro-drone over the club the next day. Installed a long-range mic on a lamppost. Patched into a server downtown using a stolen port left wide open by lazy IT. By noon, he had everything. Movements. Faces. Transactions. It was Davenport's all over again. Only this time, the men were louder, sloppier, bolder. They didn't think anyone would dare come for them. That night, Leah made the call and was extracted. Safe, quiet, untraceable. And the Glenview? They never knew until it was too late. Chuck uploaded the footage at 3:06 a.m. to the same channel, same inboxes, same network of quiet helpers. And when the sun rose the next morning, the world saw it. Another luxury front shattered. Victims rescued. One name linked between both cases, Chuck Norris. The fires may have started in Hillgrove, but the smoke? It was everywhere now, and it was calling out names. End of Act 4, cliffhanger. In a high-rise across the state, a man watched the broadcast from his penthouse. He sipped brandy, unbothered. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown contact. "Chuck Norris is coming for you." The man laughed. "Let him come. He doesn't know who I am." But outside, parked across the street, a single truck waited. Engine off, windows dark. And inside, Chuck watched and waited. The tower rose like a threat above the city. Glass and steel. 43 floors of wealth, influence, and secrets kept under polished floors and polite smiles. At the top, behind tinted windows and walls of silence, sat the one man no one mentioned by name. Elliot Cross. Banker. Investor. Philanthropist. Monster. Chuck had never seen his face in person, only in photos. Files. The rare article written by someone who didn't know better. But now, he was close enough to breathe the same air. And Elliot Cross didn't know it yet. The lobby of the tower was cold and hollow. Marble floors, stainless steel trim. Every footstep echoed. A receptionist behind a curved desk didn't look up when Chuck walked in. He didn't wear a suit, didn't carry a briefcase, didn't look like anyone who belonged. But when Chuck stepped onto the elevator and hit the top floor button with a key card stolen from a man who wouldn't be waking up soon, Nobody stopped him. Because people like Chuck don't ask for permission. Meanwhile, inside the penthouse, Elliot Cross poured a second drink. He wore a gray vest and a darker grin. His eyes never smiled. He'd just gotten off the phone with his team. They'd reassured him. Chuck Norris was gone. Off-grid. Likely moving on. He's an old legend, they said. He makes noise, then vanishes. But Elliot wasn't stupid. He knew legends didn't vanish. They just got closer. The elevator dinged. Chuck stepped out. No guns. No army. Just him. And the weight of everything that had led him here. He passed a curved wall of mirrors, boots echoing across hardwood. A security guard at the far door blinked when he saw him. Too late. Chuck's elbow caught him in the ribs. He folded like paper. The door opened, and there was Elliot Cross. Alone. By design. "Mr. Norris," he said, smiling. "How dramatic." Chuck didn't speak. He stepped in, letting the door close behind him. The penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. Every sound felt staged. Artificial. Chuck scanned the room. Art on the walls. Furniture untouched. A fireplace without ashes. This wasn't a home. It was a stage. "I was wondering when you'd make your way up," Elliot said, pouring a second glass. "Whiskey." Chuck didn't move. Didn't blink. "You think burning a few restaurants exposes me?" Elliot continued. "You think rescuing a few girls undoes years of building?" Chuck's jaw tightened. "You're a coward," he said. "You hide behind others. Behind wealth. But it won't save you." Elliot laughed softly. "Save me? From what? You? You're not the law. You're a relic. A myth kept alive by conspiracy theorists and internet tough guys." He stepped closer. "You've stirred the pot, sure. But this game? This city? I own it. I decide who eats and who disappears." Chuck's eyes didn't waver. Not anymore. A loud crack split the silence. A second guard tried to come in. Chuck turned just enough, caught the man's arm mid-swing, and redirected his weight into the glass coffee table. Shattered. Silence again. Elliot's smile faltered. Just slightly. "What do you want?" he asked, now not as cocky. "You came this far. You made your move. So what? Do you kill me and hope it makes a difference?" Chuck stepped forward. "I'm not here to kill you." He dropped a flash drive onto the marble table. It slid across the surface. Elliot stared at it. "What is that?" "Everything. Evidence." "No. A confession. Yours. Yours." Elliot picked it up, hesitated, then walked to his office. Plugged it in. A video began to play. A woman's voice. Then a second. Then his own. Dozens of calls. Recordings. Meetings. Every secret. Every threat. "Ow!" Chuck didn't answer. He didn't need to. The man watching the footage knew what it meant. He was done. Not because Chuck would kill him. Because now the world would see. "This doesn't change anything," Elliot snapped, fury breaking through the surface. "People like me don't go to jail. We build the jails." Chuck didn't flinch. "You're right," he said. "You won't go to jail. Then what?" Chuck walked to the window, looked down at the city, then said quietly, "You'll fall." Outside, police cruisers began to surround the building. Reporters. Cameras. Chuck had timed it perfectly. The same van from the Glenview sat out front, broadcasting live. Everything Elliot just watched? It was already out there. The glass in Elliot's hand dropped. Shattered. He backed away from the screen like it burned him. "You son of a..." But Chuck was already walking out. "This isn't for me," he said over his shoulder. "This is for every person you made invisible." By the time Elliot Cross turned back to his desk, his phone was already ringing. And this time, nobody on the other end was offering help. Chuck left the building through the service elevator. No applause. No headlines. Just another street. Another night. Another breath. He passed a homeless man sitting beside the loading dock. Chuck dropped something into the man's cup. A card. On it, one word. "Rise." The man looked up. "Who are you?" Chuck kept walking. Didn't answer. Didn't need to. The world would tell the story. The way it always did. With legend. In a jail in Hillgrove, Harlan Davenport sat in the visitation room. A guard brought in a new file. Inside, a photo of Elliot Cross being taken into custody. Harlan stared at it. Smiled for the first time in weeks. "Told you he was coming." The city didn't burn, but it smelled like something had been scorched. Not the buildings. Not the streets. But the silence. The silence that had coated everything. The silence of fear, of denial, of power unchecked, was gone. And in its place was something raw. People were talking. Newspapers couldn't print fast enough. News anchors repeated Chuck Norris's name until it sounded like a myth made real. Social media turned into a timeline of takedowns, truths, and victims with the courage to speak. But in the places where Chuck had passed through, quietly, without ceremony, the air felt heavier. Because justice leaves shadows too. And what gets broken doesn't fix itself overnight. In Hillgrove, the old building that once held Davenport's was being gutted. Furniture dragged out. Signs stripped down. The last of the gold lettering scraped from glass that no longer reflected power. A woman named Teresa, once a hostess, stood across the street. A cup of coffee in her hand. Her apron gone. Her eyes hollow. "It looks smaller now," she said quietly. Beside her stood Emily, the girl who started it all. The girl who passed Chuck that note. She didn't speak. She just nodded. Because when a giant falls, it doesn't roar. It crumbles. In a modest shelter 2 counties over, Leah was sitting in a circle of chairs. The kind with gray carpet and cheap walls. But in the center, warmth. A counselor sat with a notebook. She didn't press. Just waited. Leah cleared her throat. "I was at the Glenview," she said for the first time out loud. "They made us feel like we owed them something." Another girl reached out, touched her hand. "You don't owe them anything." The room nodded. Not out of pity, out of solidarity. Because for the first time, someone had pulled the curtain back. And behind it, they weren't alone anymore. Back in Crestwood, the mayor called an emergency press conference. He thanked federal investigators, praised the bravery of citizens who acted when the system didn't. He didn't say Chuck's name. Didn't have to, because you don't name storms. You remember the wake they leave. In a cafe near the train station, a young man named Miguel watched the footage again. He'd been a dishwasher in Davenport's before Chuck showed up. He never spoke to the man, but he remembered seeing him walk in, the way he didn't react when pushed, the way he returned. And now, Miguel was filling out a police academy application. "I don't want to just hide in kitchens," he said to himself. He signed the bottom and smiled. Meanwhile, Chuck had vanished. Again, he left the city before sunrise. No interviews, no recognition, just one note, mailed to a local news desk. Justice doesn't end when they fall. It begins when we rise. CN, the journalist, framed it, not because of who wrote it, but because of what it meant. At a federal hearing days later, Elliot Cross sat cuffed and furious, but quiet. He didn't fight, didn't speak, because what could he say? Everything was out there now. The calls, the accounts, the signatures. Even the men who once stood beside him were cutting deals to stay out of deeper holes. Chuck didn't attend the hearing. He didn't need to. He knew that Cross's real sentence wasn't prison. It was being seen for who he truly was. At the courthouse, Emily stood on the steps after the verdict. A reporter approached her. "You were one of the first to step forward. Do you have anything to say?" Emily looked past the crowd, to the clouds above, then down to her hands. She opened her palm, a wrinkled napkin, the one Chuck had written on. "We rise," she read softly, then turned to the camera. "This isn't about what happened to me. It's about what we're building now. Something better, something safer." She turned, walked away, and didn't look back. In a dusty diner far from the city, a woman stepped out of the kitchen. She wore an apron, held a notepad, looked around at the morning customers, and then saw him. Corner booth, hat low, coffee steaming in front of him. She smiled, approached. "We've got eggs and pancakes. And peace." Chuck looked up. "Peace sounds good. On the house." "Not this time." He set down a bill. She didn't take it. "You paid already." "I did. With what you left behind." Chuck's eyes flicked up. Soft. Steady. He nodded once. She returned to the counter. No questions. Just the quiet hum of safety restored. Back in Hillgrove, Frank, the old cook from Ruby's Grill, hung a photo beside the cash register. It wasn't of Chuck. It was of the booth. Empty. A full cup of coffee in front of it. Beneath the frame, a handwritten plaque. For the ones who stood when others Saturday. Norris booth. People came in just to sit there, to take a moment, to breathe, and to believe in the possibility of good men showing up at the right time. In a dim warehouse on the far edge of the state line, a phone rang. A man in a suit picked it up, listened, didn't speak, then slowly hung up. They took out Davenport, Cross, the Glenview, all of it. Silence. Then a whisper. There's only one left now. Across the room, someone opened a case. Inside, files. Names. One circled in red. Chuck Norris. And beneath it, a single sentence. Rain fell over the interstate in slow, deliberate sheets. Chuck drove through it like it wasn't there. Wipers silent. Eyes ahead. His truck, old and dust-covered, hummed with quiet resolve as the world blurred around him. Somewhere behind him were cities turned upside down. Names erased from buildings. Monsters cuffed and dragged from penthouses. But he wasn't done yet, because somewhere out there, the man behind it all still breathed. The tip came through a burner phone. Untraceable. One sentence. You missed one. He's still out there, and he knows you're coming. Chuck didn't reply. He didn't have to. He already knew where he was going. Across the state line, nestled behind an industrial port, stood an estate known only as the Hollow. It wasn't on maps, wasn't in databases. It didn't need to be. It belonged to the kind of man who never needed a public face to own the world. His name, Vincent Ray. You wouldn't find his picture online, but you'd find his fingerprints on everything dirty that touched clean hands. He was the one who funded Davenport, the one who paid off Elliot Cross, the one who cleaned the crime so no one smelled it. And now, he knew Chuck Norris was coming. Inside the Hollow, the rain didn't touch the windows. The glass was too thick, the walls too cold. Security men, sharper, meaner, moved through the halls without a word. Vincent stood at the center of a private war room. A map on the wall, photos, notes. A single red pin dropped on Hillgrove. Chuck's face on the board. He's a relic, Vincent said, but relics still cut if you step wrong. His advisor, a man named Klein, nodded. He's dismantled everyone we've worked with in the last 6 months. Good, Vincent replied. Let him come. He turned to the screen. Security feeds. Checkpoints. He smiled. We don't run from wolves. No, we cage them. Chuck parked his truck 2 miles from the estate. No lights. No GPS. He walked the rest on foot, through mud and mist, as the rain slowed to a whisper. The woods around the Hollow weren't just trees. They were a labyrinth of surveillance. Sensors. Hidden traps. Heat-sensing drones. Chuck saw them all, and moved around them, like he'd done in places darker than this. Because the thing about cages? You can't trap someone who already lives outside the system. At 2:41 a.m., Chuck reached the edge of the perimeter, 20 feet from the main gate. He crouched, listened. He could hear them inside. Guns, boots, whispered orders. They knew. He stepped forward, deliberate, straight into the cameras. One by one, every red light on the sensors flicked to green. Because he wasn't here to sneak in. He was here to be seen. Inside the war room, alarms lit the screen. He's here, Klein said. Vincent's eyes lit up. Good. Start the broadcast. Broadcast. The world's watching. Let them see what happens when a legend walks in a fire. He smiled. Let's burn him. Chuck entered the main courtyard. No weapon in his hand. Just a stance, that coiled calm, the kind that makes men hesitate before they move. From every window above him, rifles were trained. Spotlights hit him. And then, the doors opened. Vincent Ray stepped out. Tall, pale, in a black coat. No mask. Just arrogance sharpened by wealth and untouched power. Mr. Norris, he called. You've been busy. Chuck didn't answer. I'm flattered you came. Really, most people don't make it this far. Silence. Vincent stepped closer. But let's stop pretending. You can't win here. Not this time. Chuck looked around once. You're right. Vincent smirked. Then why come? Chuck stared. To end it. At that moment, a drone buzzed overhead. But it wasn't Vincent's. It was Chuck's. Broadcasting live. To the same accounts. The same networks. The same allies that had toppled the last 2 empires. Vincent's face. His words. His threats. All of it now public. And worse, the confession about the ones who disappeared. The deals. The cover-ups. All buried in the war room behind him. Because while Vincent had been watching Chuck walk in, Chuck's second drone had hacked his feed. Vincent's smirk cracked, just slightly. You think anyone will believe this? They already do. You still won't leave this place alive. Chuck stepped forward. Maybe not. He paused. But you won't leave it untouchable. And then it happened. The power cut. All lights out. Emergency backup flickered on. Guard scrambled. Chuck moved. He wasn't fast. He wasn't loud. He was inevitable. One guard down. Another disarmed. No wasted motion. Vincent tried to retreat, but the doors were locked. Chuck stepped through the hallway like smoke. One punch, silence climb. 2 steps later, he was in the war room. He grabbed the hard drive, smashed the servers, left the flash drive behind, still broadcasting. Vincent threw a punch. It was weak, born from fear, not training. Chuck caught it, held it. You hurt people who couldn't fight back. He twisted. Vincent dropped, groaning. Now you face someone who can. Chuck didn't kill him. He left him alive, tied to the same chair where he'd once threatened others. And beside him, all the evidence, the faces, the stories, the truth. By dawn, law enforcement swarmed the hollow. Federal, state, private. Vincent didn't resist. He couldn't, because everything had already gone live. Chuck didn't wait for applause. He walked through the backfield, disappeared into the trees. By the time anyone asked who had brought down the last monster, he was already gone. Somewhere far away, in a motel off Route 12, a kid checked into a chat forum, typed something under a burner name. He did it. Took them all down. Alone. Someone replied, "He's not just a man. He's a warning." And below that, a simple post appeared, from an account no one could trace. Just 3 words. Not done yet. The sun broke through the storm for the first time in weeks. It didn't rise over towers of steel or the ruins of the hollow. It rose over a small stretch of highway that cut through open land, past tired trees and silent towns. The kind of road where you don't check your phone. You just drive, think, breathe. And on that road, a truck. Old, familiar. At the wheel, Chuck Norris. He didn't need to look back. He never did, because everything behind him now carried his fingerprints. But more than that, his silence. The kind that follows storms. The kind that means something changed forever. At the edge of the final report, the FBI admitted it. All known links to the trafficking network have been exposed. Assets frozen. Trials pending. One agent added, under their breath, "Whoever started this didn't want credit. Just results." Across social media, the video from the hollow reached 22 million views. Newspapers called it the fall of the untouchables. But for Chuck, it was just another promise kept. In a courthouse packed with press, Vincent Ray stood in chains. When asked for a statement, he said nothing. But when they played back the final broadcast from his war room, the video of him smirking while talking about people as currency, the silence in the courtroom shifted. People didn't cry. They clenched their fists. And behind the cameras, a dozen survivors watched. Not as victims anymore, but as witnesses. Emily testified first. Her voice didn't shake. She wore no makeup, no practice smile, only truth. "I never expected anyone to help us," she said. But someone did. Someone who didn't need thanks, who didn't need recognition. He just got up, and in that moment, everyone in that room knew who she meant. Even without his name, even without his face. Somewhere across the country, Ruby's Grill was being rebuilt. Frank had reopened it under a new name. The Stand. Same coffee, same red booths. But one wall was different. Photos lined it now, not of Chuck but of those he saved. A collage of faces, anonymous and brave. In the center, a booth, always empty. A sign beside it, reserved for those who rise. CN. Chuck never returned. But one day, an envelope showed up at the diner. Inside, no return address, just a photo. A woman with a child, smiling in a new home, safe. On the back, scribbled in black ink, "We're okay now. Because of you." Frank didn't say a word. He just added it to the wall. In a church basement in Crestwood, Leah sat in front of a dozen young women. She was teaching now. Not math, not English. Something bigger. "You don't have to be fearless," she said. "You just have to stop pretending you're alone." She kept a coin in her pocket. A challenge coin Chuck had left behind when no one was watching. She didn't know where it came from, only that it said, "You stood up, so now I can sit." And that was enough. On the outskirts of a small border town, Chuck filled up his truck at a station that didn't even take cards. He paid in cash, tipped the kid behind the counter more than the tank cost. "Thanks, sir," the kid said. Chuck nodded. "Keep your eyes open." The kid blinked. "You in law enforcement?" "Something like that." "You ever been on TV?" Chuck raised an eyebrow. "Once. Long time ago." Then walked out. As Chuck pulled back onto the road, a storm gathered in the distance. Lightning flickered, not fearfully, but like a drum roll. Like the world knew he wasn't done. That somewhere, someone was watching from the dark, wondering if they could get away with it next time. And that somewhere, someone whispered, "He's out there. He always is." Final scene it. Unknown location. A man sat in a dimly lit room, laptop open. He scrolled past footage, testimonies, mugshots. Chuck's name didn't appear once. But the story? It was all his. He closed the laptop, looked at the person across from him, a young girl, trembling. "Don't worry," he said. "He finds people like you. Always." The girl looked up. "But how will he know?" And just then, a knock on the door. Slow, calm, measured. The man's eyes widened. He walked to the door, opened it. Outside, empty, except for a single note on the ground. "You're not alone anymore." The end, or just the beginning.